nothing they can do about that.
Yes.
They're literally saying we're in charge of this party, but we also cannot change anything about it. Well, then why the hell should you stay there?
Well, let's move on to Ohio because there's a lot to talk about in Ohio.
Oh, boy.
The main thing about Ohio right now is the shit show Republican primary. We've got Ohio Treasurer Josh Mandel. We've gone over this a bit, but just as a refresher, Ohio Treasurer Josh Mandel, State GOP Chair Jane Timken, an investment banker Mike Gibbons, and of course the G-Shucks Yaley JD Vance. I just want to quote this Time magazine report on a recent GOP debate. It was the greatest hits of the conservative fantasy last night on stage in Wilberforce, Ohio, as the Republican Senate candidates clashed in another debate. Topics for discussion: massive ballot harvesting operations in urban areas, jail time for Dr. Anthony Fauci, a defense of Reps Marjorie Taylor Greene and Madison Cawthorn, Hunter Biden's laptop and Joe Biden's family crime syndicate, a total deportation of immigrants in the country illegally, and the restoration of Donald Trump to the White House as quickly as possible. Dave, have you been to Ohio recently?
Yeah, I'll head back there. I was there only for a little while when Vance was rolling out his green endorsement. Not the biggest thing that happened in the race. And I was there last year for the Nina Turner Chantel Brown thing, getting a rematch. But it was hard to get a feel on things there, and it was hard until the Trump endorsement, because you had a ton of in some ways flawed Republican candidates. The whole JD Vance theory, which I think is being borne out, is yes, I have said more bad things about Donald Trump, who I did not vote for in 2016, than any of these people, but I'm better at talking than they are. And that's been true. I mean, he's just better. He's more compelling. He's meaner, which I think is if you read Hillbilly Elegy, I mean, I don't think it's inconsistent with the JD Vance of Hillbilly Elegy. I mean, so he's a kid who grew up with a chip on his shoulder. Yeah, it was his family was poor. He didn't know who to blame, and then as an adult, as a MAGA guy, he knows who to blame. He just adopted that.
Oh, I love though how he switched. He went from blaming his parents for being weak, and for having bad hillbilly blood, just being trash, to now it's the Democrats and China's fault for getting them all hooked on fentanyl
and Mexico and the Mexican border.
Yeah. We'll put in a clip of his most recent, hey, are you racist? So am I, ad.
Are you a racist? Do you hate Mexicans? The media calls us racist for wanting to build Trump's wall. They censor us, but it doesn't change the truth. Joe Biden's open border is killing Ohioans, with more illegal drugs and more Democrat voters pouring into this country.
I got to say, I marveled at we all marveled at how like phony and transparent his attempt to suck up to the people who he spent his career defaming in order to get head pats from Hollywood liberals. And he is inauthentic at it, but his opponents are all, none of those are strong candidates. And the guy who sort of embodied like the authentic version of what Vance was going for, Mandel, is a fucking serial loser. The guy's run for every office in the state and gotten his ass kicked. So it's like there's no strong horse there to oppose him. And then what Vance has is the fact that because he started off as the ultimate POC striver, and his initial like worldview is basically liberal, like it's these hillbillies' own fault. That is the liberal diagnosis for the problems he grew up with, and that's why they all liked him and they gave him a movie. He knows them inside and out, and he is one basically, and so he can speak in a way that gets under the skin of liberals, and that means that they talk about him and they get mad at him. And I don't think Trump necessarily notices anything that discreetly online, but you know who does? Don fucking Jr. Don Jr. is more online than anybody on earth. He's more hooked into the just dispiriting meme war between Democrats and Republicans. So he knows that Vance gets liberals pissed because he can push their buttons. The same way that the post left became like a phenomenon on Twitter, because unlike MAGA people saying things that are just gibberish, this is like a critique from within in a way. And it just drives him crazy. And then Don Jr. sees that and he's like, hey, Dad, if you don't have anybody else you like in Ohio, how about JD Vance? And since there is nobody else for Trump to like instinctively pick, he goes, sure. And that means it's people like us who are responsible for this motherfucker actually going to probably win, which I think is honestly perfect. We were talking about how at least there's that like remaining, bullshit detector in humans to prevent a slug like JD Vance from sneaking in. And now that's gone too. And how could it last?
I started to put stock in him when he gives a speech at the NatCon conference. That's the post liberals you're talking about. and his theme is that the left is led by people who have no children and therefore have no
Yeah.
buy-in in the future, which is a very pilled new right argument, right? That
Yeah.
is that is like Bronze Age mindset. That's a lot of these new things here. You saw it with this Tucker Carlson. Everything was memeing. It kind of came pre-memed, but the Tucker Carlson promotional video about the end of men.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
We
that's
got
where
to do
the
testicular
yeah,
tanning.
that's very online, and Don Jr. is very aware of that, and Vance, I mean, to the extent he came up with himself and the extent he adopted it, it's a mix. But that's the new stuff, and it's very clear when you're watching him in debate with guys who are just MAGA as of 2019. That
Mhm.
they haven't done the new reading. They're using last year. They're
They're on the
using
old script.
they're on the old sales. They don't have the good Glengarry leads. He's got the good Glengarry leads, which is the left is not just bad, they are perverts who don't have children and they're trying to turn your kid gay. That is a big undercurrent in a lot of this stuff. I mean, he referred to TikTok as the Chinese pedo app, and that is just, I think, really right inside the heads of a lot of Republican, not just elites, but some of the voters too. There is that I've seen this mindset that's powering a lot of the school protests, which is yeah, these liberals are just, they want to watch Disney movies and experiment with gender, and they're ruining America because America is supposed to be a place where you can have a family and afford a house. And what Vance does successfully is say also those things, which is, I mean, like, he has a riff that I saw in the campaign trail where he talks about BlackRock and investors buying up houses so they can rent them to people, and that's an issue I've heard the left run on and with
Mhm.
ideas. And his is there is like, I don't want my kid to grow up in a future where he's buying Chinese products and living in a house that he can't owned by a Chinese banker. And I'm like, well, that's a populism. There you go. You're connecting this to something real, and you're also really irritating the left in your spare time. Whereas like Mandel, and these guys, I really can't stress Trump. I also watched these debates. The debates were just very revealing of who had juice and who didn't.
Mhm.
And the guy who's just been giving speeches to, not just, but Vance has been taken around the country, kind of drilled, got the whole Peter Thiel like mindset and makeover, and you get to be really good at talking and arguing, which I think he was already. And he's running against guys who were just very stuck on talking points and kind of stumbling around when the Ukraine invasion happened. I mean, Vance was this is a little bit of tangent. Vance's statement on Ukraine initially was, once he didn't care. Two, that we'd invested as Americans in a failed Ukrainian army. So he totally misses the boat on Zelensky mania. Let's like, even conservatives were saying, "Well, I wish we had a real president like Zelensky instead of Biden." But his opponents didn't really do anything with it because they're like, "What's the talking point on this?" Well, Biden is weak and Ukraine is good, and he would just swoop in and say, "Yeah, my opponents are acting emotionally. They want World War III." Where I had the guts to say Ukraine doesn't matter and the Mexican border does. I mean, he just outplayed them. I mean, there's some campaigns where like Herschel Walker is sleepwalking to victory. Vance actually did kind of have to hustle for it, and by pissing off liberals, as we were saying.
So all the candidates there were humping hard for the Trump endorsement. This is from NPR recounting TV ads. Josh Mandel's ad was Josh Mandel, pro God, pro gun, pro Trump. Another was Jane Timken saying there are pretenders in the Senate race. Jane Timken is the real Trump conservative. And
Me
Mike
so
Gibbons,
horny for President Trump.
yeah, and Mike Gibbons saying Trump and Gibbons are businessmen with a backbone. Trump saved our economy before. Gibbons knows how to do it again. None of them got the endorsement. Vance did get the endorsement. No new polling since then. But last time we checked, the RCP checked in on Ohio. Vance was in third place, fully 7 points behind Josh Mandel. You think, Dave, that's going to flip with the Trump endorsement, and Vance has a real shot at pulling off the primary,
It's
which is
close enough.
in just a matter of days.
Yeah, and early voting had been happening, but people weren't really taking advantage of it yet. This and we're going to Pennsylvania. These are both kind of like 2016 GOP primary all over again, where somebody with the right appeal of celebrity and like lib hating only needs to get like 30% to win because no one else will get out. There's just all these. I mean, Mike Gibbons, this banker who's running, who led in the polls for a minute, is just incredibly wealthy and self funding. And I've never been a billionaire investment banker, but I assume if you can buy like anything else, why would you say, well, yeah, I spent 20 million on it in this race, but I'm going to quit. Mandel, we discussed. Jane Timken, who is the chair of the Republican Party in Ohio, is just very very programmed and has not and has like jumped on every single message. It's effective that Vance has been just immigration. The Peter Thiel ads also bashing immigration. Whereas Timken was like, whatever was in the news, she didn't add, and it became just kind of a joke in every debate. I think at least 3 times each per debate, she would just turn back question by saying, "I'm a mom on a mission who will have the grit and the grace to deliver the MAGA agenda." And people are whatever we think of the voter, like people have gotten conditioned to say, "Well, that one sounds like she's reading from talking points," whereas that guy sounds like me on Twitter. And like the me on Twitter guy, that's the way to go.
Yeah, people are looking for a mirror.
Yeah.
You gotta be able to perform.
Well, just to touch on the Democratic side, in the Democratic primary for Senate, we have U.S. Rep. Tim Ryan, who you might remember from the presidential primaries.
Oh, yeah.
Roughly
That was
1 billion
amazing
years
move by him.
ago.